The Literary Corner, brought to you by New York Parrot TV, the voice for humanity. Hi, this is the most amazing collection I have read so far. I'm a readingaholic. Dustin Pickering, you know me from Parrot Literary Corner. This is the Literary Parrot, available at Amazon.com and its various affiliates. If you have not seen this collection, it's 249 pages of glorious global literature in a contemporary vein. This covers a lot of subjects from the coronavirus to violence on the streets, to love, to romance. Everything you can imagine is in this collection, and you should buy it now. I'll tell you why. It's a collection of unique voices from the Literary Parrot. People have been on our show, have participated in this, or have been published on our website, newyorkparrot.com. So please, I implore you, buy a copy. Thank you. The Literary Corner, brought to you by New York Parrot TV, the voice for humanity. Hello, welcome to New York Parrot's Literary Corner. I'm Dustin Pickering, your noble and honest host. I want to remind our viewers that you are on a live broadcast. If you'd like to leave comments or questions for me or the guests, then we'll be more than happy to oblige you in answering. Today we have Monica Joy Farah. She is originally from Lincoln, Nebraska, but she has lived, worked, and adventured in various countries throughout Asia and South America. Her poems have been published in journals such as the Tampa Review, the North American Review, the Cimarron Review, and the Mid-American Review, and more. I believe she was having some technical difficulties, but I don't know if she's with us quite yet. If not, I can do a little poetry reading, an impromptu poetry reading for the viewers, and then we'll wait and see if she gets on in a little bit. I'm guessing that no, she is not quite with us yet. So what I'm going to do is read from my book, Only and Again. This was published by Set U out of Philadelphia. These guys are excellent publisher. This book is called Only and Again, and it's my own work. And this is a sort of, again, I go right into the philosophical and love-oriented work. This poem is it's an untitled poem. Her waist is where I plant my torch. I seek the oblivion of boasting, but no braggart can catch your magic. The times are contained within the withering earth like a skim satiation. Houses are imperiled by free will. Contradiction is something we do not understand. You tell us to watch television. Night is becoming you. You are dying. The rose is between your lips. We will tango. Children know if they only recently left the room. They fill the world with wonders of joy, and we know their stupendous flight, like witches from the sky, and they seek the most innocent alarms. Don't look twice to the same river. It is gone. And that's from Only and Again, my book that just came out earlier this year. It's available on Amazon. And this beautiful art is by Sophia Khatun in India. She's a fabulous painter and artist and poet as well, award-nominated poet, major award-nominated poet. And her art is fabulous. That cover art is hers, as well as some few little sketches in here from her. I'll read another poem from a different section of this book. This is called Escape. The crystal road is translucent, ducked in splendor and bright ecstasy. I carry the dreams of rotten whores on my back, tedium reaching its summit. The blades of my back stiffen and edge out their mountains. I am my own holiness, sharp and cringing at the delight of names. Words describe my plush tomes. I don't know where to find my home. I traverse this road, tired and patient. I won't find God. I won't rejoice. It's called Escape from Only and Again. And I recommend this book as it is my own publication. And I hope that people will at least give it a look and check out the reviews on Amazon and give me some thumbs up or something to let me know what you think. Also, I want to recommend as a reader, this book just came out. It's from Classiques in India. It's Sadhana by Rabindranath Tagore. It's a reprint of lectures by Tagore. Oh, we have Monica with us now. I do want to recommend this book to our viewers, as I said, just to complete my sentence. And then I'll go right into our questions with Monica. How are you doing today, Monica?
I am well. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
Quite all right. I was doing a little reading of poetry and waiting for you to come on. I'm glad you made it on
Perfect.
without any trouble. So it's
Me
wonderful to
too.
speak with you. So my first question is, what is your submission process like? You've obviously has some journals that have are pretty high prestige that you've published in, and how many rejections do you think you get per acceptance?
Oof. You know, honestly, I've never actually done the calculus on that, but certainly it's quite a few, quite a few. I get a lot of
Yeah,
rejections. It's all part of the process.
absolutely.
I don't
It's
know if I
definitely.
quite I don't know if I quite hit the 100 rejections per year goal. It's probably less than that, but yeah, definitely a lot.
But I would imagine you submit quite a bit, though. I mean, you've been published in some pretty good journals that have. I mean, I've heard of all the journals that you mentioned there, and your
Yes.
bio. So I'm sure you do quite a bit of submitting.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends, honestly, on the time of year. Like over the summer, there's hardly any journals that are open for submissions. But certainly
Yeah.
during like the big, fall and spring submission periods,
Hmm.
I'll be submitting, at least one a week, but usually I try for more, which I need to get back into. I've been in my summer lull of taking a
Hmm.
luxurious break from submissions, but I need to get back
So,
into it.
so do you write during those lulls, as you mentioned? Do you do a lot of
Definitely.
writing? Excellent.
Definitely. Yeah. It's honestly kind of nice to take a break from submitting because that process is just, it's a lot of grunt work. So, but it is worth it.
Yeah, it is. It's tiring too, and I'm constantly getting rejections and having to do research on these journals to see what they like and when
Yeah.
they would take submissions, what kind of submissions they take. Some only take certain kinds of people, certain kinds of poems, and it's like you have to know whether they want from January 14th to January 17th only if you're a such and such in your this occupation or something, and then blah blah blah. They have all these very specific guidelines sometimes, so it's very tedious.
Yeah, and I feel like the websites are not always the most updated
Hmm.
necessarily. I feel like,
Right,
you can kind of tell they're run by poets. I mean that I mean that endearingly, but
right, right.
sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, our submissions are opening on this date." And then you'll check back on that date and it will still say, "Oh, our submissions are opening on this date." And they're not. And then a week later it'd be like, "Oh, our submissions are opening on this date." And you're like, "Oh, that's great. Thanks."
Sometimes they don't update them for I've seen sites that say something like 2017 we're open to submissions, and it's like, hey guys, that was 4 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how do readers relate to your work, and when they read it, what kind of comments do you get back, and as far as when they read your actual work?
How do readers relate to my work? I mean, I definitely, a lot of the things I write about are not necessarily things that everyone can relate to because I do a lot of like, outdoor adventures and travel and stuff. And I
Mhm.
tend to write a lot about those. Um, but I guess I strive in my poetry, I strive to make my work very accessible and very immersive. I feel like I want each poem to sort of be doorway into like another world where you can kind of step through and have this immersive experience. And I guess I want my readers to feel sort of transported and feel like they're really there. So I would say my style is very like high sensation and very vivid and very narrative. And that, you know, when I feel like a poem is successful is when I get feedback that sort of reflects those intentions. You know, people say that, oh yeah, I felt like I was really there, or I really experienced this. I felt, you know, I've never been to this place, or I've never done this thing, but having read your poem, I felt like I did. And that's sort of when I know that I've succeeded. So.
Absolutely. So you use a lot of descriptive and emotive language to describe a scene or a place or an event going on as you're participating in it. So do you write a lot about your travels? Do you write autobiographically, or do you write about places and things you're experiencing rather than events?
I mean, I guess a little of both. It's definitely most of my poetry is sort of, you know, first person. I feel like when writing about a place, especially not a place that I am from, I feel like the best way for me to write about it is from the first person and from my perspective, because I am a visitor to these places. I'm not like an authoritative voice on, you know, a certain culture or a certain landscape. I can only write from, you know, my experience being a foreigner and being an outsider and like my interaction with that place.
So when you traveled to South America and Asia, did you participate in poetry readings and poetry circles in those places?
Not as much in South America, because I was doing more like backpacking and traveling around when I was there. I did in South Korea, because I taught English in South Korea for a year. I was in a city just like an hour south of Seoul, and I was involved with some of the poets and writers of those communities. Although mostly some locals, but it was mostly expats. That I think that is sort of the one downside to being a writer as opposed to, you know, being like a visual artist, is that, you know, there's language barriers.
Right.
And so it's a little harder to cross those, because I only speak extremely basic Korean, you know, and so it does tend to be people, you know, who are at least, you know, pretty proficient in English, because it's one thing to be able to speak a language conversationally. It's another thing to be able to like understand and appreciate something like poetry. So definitely some barriers there.
Yeah, I published a poet from South Korea named Wonsu Kim. I don't know if you're familiar with him at all. Yeah, he's a Christian-oriented poet. We published his book, Prescription of Civilization. It was we had some interesting conversations about whether or not it should be of or for civilization. You know, like what do the difference of words imply? And that was kind of interesting, considering that his first language was obviously Korean and mine was English, and so it was kind of like, what are we trying to convey here? You know,
right.
What is the meaning of the book specific? And so it became Prescription of Civilization. So yeah, it was an interesting conversation back and forth for a while. What are your favorite journals to read that are being published today?
Ooh, I would say honestly, my two go-tos would be the Adroit Journal and the Common. Just because I feel like I really resonate with the style of poetry that they publish. I've been trying to get published in both of them. It hasn't happened yet, but I have received some, you know, nice rejections, so it's gonna happen. Yeah, I feel like, thank you. Just the style of poetry that they publish, just I feel like it is that very vivid and intense sort of style that I really like, and that I feel sort of really inspires me and inspires my work. So
I'm curious, what is it about traveling that you enjoy, and what do you learn in your travels that actually incorporates into your poetry?
Oh, where do I begin? I mean, so I've always been like a super, you know, adventurous, like high sensation seeking person. So, I mean, since I was a kid, I've always wanted to travel. I've always been very enamored with the whole, hashtag nomad life or whatever you want to call it. And I think for me, it has a lot to do with, I really like challenges. I like, because, people like look at my travels and they're like, oh, wow, you're going to all these cool places. It must just be this, magical, as if it's sort of this like just big long vacation. And it's definitely not. It's definitely that kind of extended travel is definitely very challenging and very difficult. But that's why I enjoy it. I really like, pushing limits. I like embracing the unknown. I like, this whole idea that what everything that you want is like on the other side of fear is sort of the way I live my life. And I think especially traveling to places where there's like a second language, a foreign language involved. My Korean is, like I said, extremely basic, but my Spanish is more conversational. Existing in a second language is, again, extremely challenging and often very frustrating, but it also sort of evokes this sense of like childlike play and wonder and curiosity and awe. And when you travel, you're always learning something. You're always being challenged. You're always being pushed. And you're always sort of discovering your own new limits, I guess. And it's a wild ride. It's not always fun. It's often very difficult, but just the transformation and the growth that comes from that is just incredible. And it's always worth it. And I think that, a lot of people look at these sort of, thrill-seeking types of people. And I think there's this misconception that thrill-seeking is just about this, almost like addictive behavior, almost like, chasing the next adrenaline rush and all that, which, I mean, I think it can be for some people. But I think to me, it's more thrill-seeking is ultimately about the pursuit of awe and wonder. And that is what travel gives me. And that is what poetry gives me as well.
Interesting. It makes me think of the essay by Bertrand Russell, Free Man's Worship, where he says basically, to kind of cut it down into its basic component, is that a free man's worship is awe. You look at nature and you look at the grandeur of life and you're just mystery. You're encompassed by the mystery and the greatness of it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a really interesting essay he wrote, kind of saying, he don't necessarily need a religion per se to have a sense of worship or anticipation of beauty. Kind of an interesting work. So, what when you say challenges, do you mean traveling itself, the learning to communicate with people in other countries with language barriers, learning the culture? I mean, what kind of challenges have you faced in travel?
I mean, like all of the above, certainly. And I guess I would add to that, like all of my travels have been done solo, essentially. So there's, just this sense of you're completely responsible for yourself, and it's like it's sort of this like learning self-reliance kind of thing, like learning to trust yourself. And there's obviously, you find community very easily when you travel alone, but sometimes you do feel very alone, and it's in those moments that you really sort of meet yourself or reckon with yourself. And additionally, I do a lot of like outdoor sports, like backpacking and etc. So I did, for example, when I was in South America, I spent like 2.5 months in Patagonia, and I was doing a lot of solo hiking, like 2, 3, 4, 5-day treks, that were very like physically challenging, over some pretty intense terrain. And so that was another aspect of challenge in that. And obviously you're missing your friends and your family back home. You're far from everything, and yeah, it's intense, but it's wonderful.
Interesting. That's interesting when you mentioned self-reliance and the way travels relate to self-reliance. And of course, I went to New York by myself one time. Never been to New York before. New York City, huge city, obviously, and it's comparable to Houston, where I'm from. When I went to New York City, it was like immense for me because I had no idea where I was. I had no idea where to be, and I just sort of winged it, I just did
Yeah.
whatever, and I couldn't even find my hotel at sometimes, and I had to get a taxi and say, this is where I'm going. Can you take me there? But it was really fun. It was a most amazing experience. I mean, so we're going to take a brief break and we'll be back with Monica's poetry. So please enjoy this momentary break.
Keep watching the New York Parrot TV, the voice for humanity.
Welcome back to the program. I hope you enjoyed the conference and Isla and also the dancing. Thanks, Monica, again for joining us. Would you like to read us a couple of poems?
Yeah, absolutely. So this first poem I'll read is set in an island in the south of Chile. And speaking of challenges and difficult moments abroad, it's sort of a rite of passage when traveling to eventually at some point you're gonna get food poisoning and you're gonna throw up somewhere where you don't expect. But those moments can be, you sometimes just have to embrace sort of the primal intensity of those moments and just roll with it. So this poem is called Love Poem for Isla Chiloway. Drunk on the exquisite stench of the fish market, I have no choice but to order the strangest ceviche I've ever seen. Erizo. A word I will later learn, but for now translates only to this bowl of ugly, irresistible mystery. Raw orange gobs, squishy and brine-soaked, the taste like sweet, bitter ink or mold-frosted cheese. I love this island for its vibrant half-abandon, how everything here demands to be savored. Tangled fishing towns rich with maritime decay, all the boats festooned with barnacles, bright paint rotting off the wooden churches. I thank my way through the rhythmic and salt-warped Spanish. I sink my feet deep into the brackish muck of the inlets, skin itching with saline. On the gray western coastline, I hike for hours across the deserted beach, past rusted anchors half-rooted, sand pocked with hoofprints, something foul brewing. This far from everything my body knows, it's inevitable. Struck with a surge of nausea in the night, I claw myself free from my sleeping bag, stagger through the misty darkness like an unseaworthy craft careening towards shipwreck, punctured hull heaving with salt water, the foam, the roar, the desolate Pacific revelry. Fuck the miles I've promised myself in the morning, but I love my body for what it risks. I love this island for how I fail to stomach it, for this swell of tidal urgency that summons me here, alone, this strip of cold sand at the ocean's edge, where I crash to my knees at last, offer up my overwhelm.
Excellent. That's very descriptive, and I like some of the interplay of words like brackish brine. And another thing I noticed is it's in present tense, so you're writing it. It's like it's happening as you're going through it. So you're kind of, as the reader, I'm experiencing it with you in the present tense rather than like say in a past tense or reading about it after the fact. So I'm experiencing it with you, not so much like listening to you tell a story kind of thing.
Experiencing it with me. Yes. See, that's exactly the
Excellent.
feedback I want.
Great. I'm glad. That's exactly what it did. Listening to it, and especially very descriptive, especially the sensations that you describe of the water and the food and the texture and the taste and so forth, and how those all play together in the poem. Excellent job. So would you like to read another one for us?
Absolutely. How many-ish would you like me to read?
2 or 3 will be fine.
Okay. I'll go ahead and read these two. These are both rock climbing poems, but also working through language barrier poems.
Okay.
So this poem is called With the Chilean Climber in Puerto Tranquilo, Patagonia.
Mm-hmm.
At the crag outside of town, his body springs across the rock face with easy precision. Forearms lit up with tendon and vein, palms sharpened with twin ridgelines of snow-capped calluses. Mírame, he says, working his way slowly through the sequence again, exaggerating every twist of his torso, every subtle articulation of wrist and ankle. So I give it another shot. I'm making progress, but my grip still shakes from lack of practice, my hands torn and tender, and inevitably I collapse onto the chalky crash pad. I'm learning to laugh about it. This is Chile. This country pressed so thin the light shows through, even the Spanish stretched into some strange new shape, and all of us exist so near the edge of something. The cliffside, the coastline, the Argentine border. Everything here gives me vertigo, even the sound of his voice. Always the dizzy moment of free fall between when he speaks a thing and when I register its meaning. It's true there are times I leap with grace through this language, but there are times the words slip like slit granite from my fingertips, times when clarity comes like a crash. But I'm making progress. I dust myself off and try again. I lick the same wounds over and over until my tongue learns the shape of them.
What I like about that one is, especially at the beginning, you use a lot of action description. Very interesting. So if you'd like to read the second one, it's another present tense poem that you experience as it's going on. You witness the movements, you witness everything going on, and the sensation of sort of the doubt about language. And I love that description where you're at the moment between I register the meaning of the words and things like that. Very nice.
Awesome. Thank you. This next poem, also in present tense, is called Rock Climbing in Nagano Prefecture, Japan. With our multilingual partners climbing at the next crag over, Moe flakes out the rope onto the cold winter bedrock, while I tie my figure 8 in silence, clap chalk into my palms. She and I know little more than the giving of thanks, so we craft a common language out of laughter and gesture and so much gratitude. The intricate syntax of rope and knot, cadence of a strong belay. With everything in place, we face each other, blinking, knowing what every climber knows. We need words to speak of what binds us. Moe gathers the scraps of her Alpine English, and we traverse this barrier together. I phrase each command like a question, and she responds in rope and motion. Take, slack, falling. This simple lingo of trust. We nod, we smile, and suddenly I am pulling myself free of this earth, rubber soles seeking every hint of a foothold, fingertips already growing icy as I deepen my breath and let my body solve its ascent, higher and higher into vertical time, where there is nothing save the sound of my unseverable focus, hypnotic clip and chime of every quick draw. And always, just below me, the soft murmur of rope against rock, this hushed give and take, this whisper that anchors me to the world.
Interesting. You know, what I like about that one is there's like the universal experience of the climb and the rope, and you use the phrase like the syntax of rope and knot. And there's a very consistent balance of throughout of the rope and its relationship to language as a metaphor. Quite interesting. That's an interesting comparison to make. Thank you for sharing that. Do you have any plans for a full collection anytime, or are you just waiting to publish a lot of stuff in journals and then maybe compile a full collection?
I definitely do have plans for a full collection. I feel like I'm still, I'm still making poems for it. I have quite a few already that will definitely end up in the final collection. But yeah, it is no promises on when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen.
Do you have a title in mind?
Working title is Dear Thrill Seeker.
Oh, okay, that's nice. Interesting. So it'll be sort of like a metaphorical correspondence with yourself in a way.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's going to explore sort of a lot of the themes that I talked about earlier, like the what it means to be a thrill seeker, essentially, which is something I have been trying to figure out for many years.
Interesting. Yeah, sometimes you kind of have to do a lot of self-discovery to come up with a sort of philosophy of things. To do a lot of obviously you're very adventurous. You go out and travel a lot, and you're kind of trying to define the meaning of what this is, and that's really interesting. It's very curious to me how you're going to a lot of extent to kind of understand who you are as a person in a way. I definitely think travel is good for that kind of thing. It gives you something to compare yourself to. Yeah, interesting. Sure. So how do you communicate with other poets now as opposed to pre-pandemic? You feel like you're doing more online communication than before, or just like the physical communication, like being in front of somebody and actually being a part of a circle?
Yeah, so I have I'm based in Lincoln, Nebraska right now, and I have been attending a writers group here for many years, which has been so influential in my work. I owe so much to that group. But I mean, during the pandemic, for a while, we were meeting outdoors, and then a little bit on Zoom, and then once we all got vaccinated, we've started meeting in person again. So that's been really nice to have that consistently through the pandemic. And then also, I have been branching out online as well, because obviously these, a lot of readings have gone online, which has allowed me to, attend readings that, across the country, which has been really cool. So that's how I met Rick Christensen, who referred me to you through one of those readings. I recently did a reading with SpoFest as well. So it's been really great to, use the sudden Zoomification of the poetry world to, to, branch out and meet new people. So it's been really good.
You know, you can. It's a form of travel in and of itself. You know, you meet all these people online in different parts of the world, and you learn a little bit about them, and you learn a little bit about their work, and you know, it broadens to a degree. I mean, you wouldn't meet a lot of these guys without the online communication and the course of the
Definitely.
pandemic pushing us on more online communication. I think that's my take. You know, there's some positives and negatives to this thing. You know. So what is your writing schedule like, and what is your editing process in that, and how much time do you spend writing versus editing, and you know, what is your balance there?
Oh, I mean, writing versus editing, I feel like they all kind of blend together. I mean, I usually will start with pen and paper in just the initial like brainstorming, you know, word vomiting phase of writing, where I'll just essentially do free writing and, you know, write whatever comes to mind, and then I'll go through and, you know, sort of pick pieces that are working for me, or pick out phrases that I think have potential. And then kind of go from there. I have, you know, a very large like poetry in progress document that is just ever growing. And it has, you know, some like half finished poems that you know, sometimes I'll get a concept for a poem, and I'll zoom in on that, and I'll just write that poem, and it kind of just all flows. Sometimes, you know, incoherent ramblings will stay in my poetry document for a long time. And I'll kind of come back and revisit them, and, you know, make a little progress, and then work on something else, and then finally, you know, they'll turn into something that I feel like I can consider a poem. So I guess it really depends, but there's a lot of coffee involved.
Loosens up
But
the mind a little bit, I think. I use a lot of caffeine too.
exactly,
Very much
yeah.
a kind of the stimulant, I guess, loosens your mind up to kind of relax and free flow, and you know, it's really interesting how that works.
Yeah,
Very much the
definitely.
writer's drug.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm definitely more of a morning. I'm not one of, you know, everyone. I feel like all these, you know, poets and artists are like, yeah, you know, nighttime is the time that you know, my creativity comes alive. And I'm like, no, nighttime is I have zero creativity at nighttime. I just want to sleep. It's when I
Interesting.
wake up that I feel most creative. So
So you're a rebel in that sense, you know.
I guess.
I think most writers are night. I mean, for me, nighttime it's very still and quiet, and it's usually cooler, and it's like I feel more comfortable at night writing and letting my mind flow. Usually around 3 a.m. It's like really early in the morning
Oh,
to me. That's when my mind just says, "Okay, time to do something." You know, I don't know why it does that. It's like it wakes me up, and it's
yeah.
like, "Get to work, Dustin." You know?
I mean, so I've heard. I've never experienced it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't write when my mind wants to sleep. So
Well, maybe I mean the in combination with being a traveler and so forth. I mean, I think a lot of those characteristics sort of combine, and you know, you obviously sound like you're kind of have a little bit of a discipline into your life where you know you segment things and have time for certain things and put them in order
definitely.
to put in order and stuff. You know, so do you have any favorite subjects you like to tackle in poetry?
Ooh, I mean, I feel like, you know, like I said, adventure, place, travel, language learning. I feel like, and you know, kind of by default, writing about those things. I write a lot, like I said, about awe and, you know, finding the beauty in fear. I guess sometimes finding the beauty
Hmm.
in things that, you know, people tend to avoid, and exploring. Okay, well, what if we don't avoid those things? What if we like meet them, and accept them, and sort of, you know, be present with those things and push through them. And I think, you know, sort of this theme of which I think is ultimately the theme of adventure or travel, or any of these things, is essentially learning to like trust in the pain of transformation, I would say. Um, kind of that, you know, kind of that like hero's journey idea of like
Yeah.
agreeing to something challenging and being taken out of your normal reality, and ultimately growing from it. So
Excellent. So it's been pleasant talking with you. Do you have a final message for our viewers?
No, I think this conversation has been great. I don't know that I have anything
Excellent.
specific to add to it. So thank you so much, Dustin. This was lovely.
Thank you as well. And maybe do you have any thank yous or any shout outs you'd like to give while you're on the program?
I mean, I'll definitely shout out Rick Christensen for recommending me to. I had never heard of this, heard of the Literary Parrot, and I'm very happy to be here. So thanks to him. Thank you, Rick.
and thank you for joining us, Monica. It's been really interesting learning a little bit about your travels and how they relate to your poetry, and how you as a person develop in your traveling and your writing and the communities you've been a part of and so forth, and the language barriers and things that help you grow and as you said, stepping over that fear, behind that fear. That's fascinating to me, that the concept. So I really enjoyed talking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed this as well.
This has been the Literary Corner, and I'm Dustin Pickering, your host. If you'd like to support this program, if you enjoyed the interview, or if you thought you learned something from us, so you can give us some extra funding from paypal.me/nyparrot. That's right there at that banner, and we'll definitely be very grateful for that. You can also reach out to me as the host if you want to be a guest. We're looking for more guests on this program. If you're a poet, a writer, an artist, any kind of creative mind, you can reach out to me at literarycorner@newyorkparrot.com. That's my email, and it's right there on the banner as you see. Today we talked with Monica Joy Farah. It was a wonderful conversation, and thank you to Rick Christensen for shouting out and giving us a heads up on her. And she's an up-and-coming poet with some interesting words of wisdom and thought on travel and fear and thrill-seeking. So we look forward to her first book. So thank you again, Monica. And basically, if we want to wait out for our Series 2 of The Literary Parrot, which is coming out in December 1st, please don't hesitate to reach out to us on any curiosity you have about the volume. It will include guests and people we've published on our website, as the Series 1 was also that. Basically, we published our guests and people from our website in Series 1. It's the same thing, Series 2, just the new guests. So thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope you have an excellent afternoon. The Literary Corner, brought to you by New York Parrot TV, the voice for humanity. Hi, this is the most amazing collection I have read so far. I'm a reading-aholic. Dustin Pickering, you know me from Parrot Literary Corner. This is the Literary Parrot, available at Amazon.com and its various affiliates. If you have not seen this collection, it's 249 pages of glorious global literature in a contemporary vein. This covers a lot of subjects, from the coronavirus to violence on the streets, to love, to romance. Everything you can imagine is in this collection, and you should buy it now. I'll tell you why. It's a collection of unique voices from the Literary Parrot. People have been on our show, have participated in this, or have been published on our website, newyorkparrot.com. So please, I implore you, buy a copy. Thank you. And The Literary Corner, brought to you by New York Parrot TV,